My thoughts as a DP on the Canon EOS R5C. Is it right for your video production? Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for once again joining me for tea time. Today we have a little bit of fireside. That smokiness of the lap song. So good, guys, so good. I hope you're joining me with your cup of tea, cup of coffee, maybe something harder, as I always say. Today we'll be talking about the Canon EOS R5C. And does it have a split personality disorder? Yes, it does. We're going to get into that in just a second and try to go through all of the positives and negatives to help you decide if this could be a really good video production camera for you, or maybe that middle ground. As I said from the beginning, before it even came out, a bridge camera between the Canon EOS R series and their C series. Big difference. One is a photo camera centric, photocentric, whereas the other one is video. We're going to talk about the two and help you decide. I hope so, at least. I'm going to give you once again my opinions as a DP, as a director of photography. What would I use and why would I use it for certain situations? All right. But before I get into it, I want to say that if you haven't downloaded any of my ebooks as of yet, go check them out over at JCristina.com/books. Once again, JCristina.com/books. They are free. Go grab them. So let's just start out. Before I get into everything, I want to say that the three things that everyone is complaining about, that the unit itself does not have IBIS, all right? No in-body image stabilization. That's number one. Also, that it doesn't do autofocus is what you hear everywhere. Oh, the autofocus is limited. Kind of, sort of, but no. We'll get into that also in a second. And finally, that yes, it has a fan, but is that the only thing that makes this a fantastic camera? Or is it just simply a Canon EOS R5 with a fan in it? And should they have just done that instead of everything else that they did? So we're going to get into those three questions and a whole bunch of other things. Now, I want to go into some of the positives and negatives and some of the differences between the Canon EOS R5 and the R5C. And I'm going to also talk to you about the Sony FX3 and whatnot and some other cameras out there like the Panasonic EVA 1 and give you my thoughts on it and the reason why I think that you should buy this or not buy this. So to start out with, of course, like I said, it does not have in-body image stabilization. Now I'll get into why Canon said that they did it in just a second, but I want to kind of brush through all of the differences, okay, between these. Now, yes, it does not have in-body image stabilization, but it does combine or allow you to combine IS, which is image stabilization in lens, with their digital stab that's in the camera itself. And I'll tell you about that in just a second. It does not have log 2. It only provides log 3. That is a little bit of a problem, okay? That does make a difference to me. Now, also, what I was saying about autofocus, and everyone is just screaming off the mountain about this autofocus situation. Well, the autofocus that they provide you is the same autofocus that you would get in a C70 in comparison to autofocus that you would get in the R5. And the difference is just simply that you lose animal tracking and automobile tracking. Basically, you do not get all of the new niceties that you do in the new Canon EOS R5. You just don't, period, end of story. Okay, but do you get your standard DPAF, your dual pixel AF that you would in any of the other cameras? Absolutely. Do you get subject tracking? Absolutely. Do you get eye and face tracking? And yes, you get all that. It's not like they took out dual pixel AF or something. They didn't. It's not like the M series where they said, oh, if you shoot 4K, sorry, you don't get dual pixel AF. You just get contrast detect. What the heck? They didn't do that. All right. So all of this, AF thing, I think is a little bit hyped. It just, yes, you don't get the latest and greatest where you get automobile tracking and raccoon tracking. No, you don't. But you get everything else, all right? So the other thing, of course, is the active cooling. This camera does have active cooling. And that's why some people said, oh, this is basically just an EOS R5 with a fan stuck to the back of it. And that's just not exactly right. It's not even close to being right, okay? This camera is more of a Frankenstein, all right? It is basically if you married the R5 to a C70, put them together, they had babies, basically this is what you got. And I'll get into that, one of the things that I like and don't like about that in a minute. Also, this active cooling that people have been talking about is they said, oh, it's too loud for video recording. it does have like a 3-stage fan in it. So you can go from low to medium to high, and obviously it gets louder as you go higher up. What I've seen online is most people are able to use this on low speed and it still doesn't overheat, and you can record 8K for days. So I don't think that the fan noise is a problem, number one, because of that. But number two, most professionals like myself will never use audio that's coming into a camera. It'd be the dumbest to do, period. We just won't do that. The internals to a camera are not made for bringing in high-end audio. They're perfect for scratch audio, and that's all that we would use it for anyways. Moving on, the EVF. The EVF on the Canon EOS R5 and the R5C are identical. Also, the rear panel, both absolutely drop dead gorgeous, and they are also identical. Now, they did screw up, in my personal opinion, is they use the exact same damn battery. And when you're trying to do a lot of video stuff like 8K, 60p and whatnot, it becomes a problem. That battery is not going to be able to do it. And matter of fact, if you record 8K, 60p, you're not going to be able to power your lens as well as the camera at the same time. You need an external power supply. Stupid. I'll get into that also in just a minute. Now, as far as the ports, all of the ports on the side of the camera of the Canon EOS R5 and the R5C are identical. The difference is you do end up getting a TCI port, and that TCI port is for time coding. Now, some people would use it, some people don't. Some people don't even know what the hell that is. Basically, think about time coding as a way to sync up multiple cameras. So what it does is it will send out a signal through a master unit to all of the cameras. Let's call it a beacon. So you hear bing, bing, bing. Let's just call it that. It's not like that, but let's just call it that. So then in post-production, syncing up is a no-brainer because everything is already synced right on that time code. Okay. So time coding, or TCI, is a really cool thing to have, but I don't use it. Or very rarely do we use it. Even in studio doing video production work, a lot of times we will just clap it, period, right? Use a slate. So I would have preferred them putting an SDI port into that camera in comparison to a TCI port. TCI is just, for me, not used all the time, whereas an SDI out would be used every single day. All right. So why they did that, I really don't know. Anyways, when we go into the HDMI port, instead of like 90% of all video cameras out there, they give you a full HDMI out. This is very important for a lot of different things that we do in production. Here, they're giving you a mini HDMI out. Just doesn't make sense to me, but that's what they did. All right. Also, one thing that they did do, which I think is really good, is have different base ISOs. So you have a base ISO of 800 or you have a base ISO of 3200. This is the exact same thing that the Panasonic EVA 1s do and a lot of other cameras. You have different base ISOs. So what ends up happening is if you need to shoot higher, you just bring it into a higher base and you end up with a little bit better noise ratio, let's just say. It's almost like there's two different circuits going on. Not almost, there is. One circuit for lower or 800 ISO and one for 3200. Okay, so I won't get into all the nuances to it. Let me just tell you about some of the issues that I have, and I'll get into them a little bit more deeply. The recording issue, I think, kind of is a problem. When you're recording at 8K, 60p, needing an external power source is the dumbest I've ever heard of, okay? If you can't do it, don't do it. Don't half-ass it. That's my personal opinion. All right. I don't need to bring a power source with me to be able to capture 8K 60 and run my lens at the same time. That's just simply stupid. All right. That's when you start crippling that you shouldn't do. You should just leave it alone and say, we can't do it. Or what you should do is put a new damn battery in it instead of the same battery that you use for the Canon EOS R5. Now, moving into XLR, most video production cameras will come with some type of XLR in. Even if you look at a Sony FX3 or something, yes, you're going to end up with a handle that on that handle has two XLRs coming into the camera. It just makes sense to have it. This unit does not. It does have a hot shoe at the top that you can put a Tascam XLR adapter onto it to bring XLR into the camera if you want. I would like to have seen it built in somehow, maybe a handle that has XLR in it as an accessory that you can purchase. So you don't have to rely on a third party to get your XLR into the camera. Kind of stupid. Also, if you're moving from photo to video, there's a switch. And this I just find problematic. So once again, this is a Frankenstein camera, and it does have a split personality disorder. And the way that this works is if you are on photo and you want to switch over to video and split that personality over to the other one, it takes about 8 to 10 seconds for it to move from photo to video or from video to photo. That's just craziness, in my opinion. So what it is doing, a lot of people haven't talked about this, but what it's doing, it's basically reloading the operating system. So instead of photocentric, when you flip it over to video, it says, hey, we're moving into video. Let's change our entire menu system for video. Literally, when you move from photo to video or from video to photo, you have a new camera. It reloads the operating system. It reloads everything. All right. So that to me just, I don't even know why. Once again, it doesn't have HDMI, a full HDMI out, which I would prefer in comparison to a mini HDMI out. So why did they do it? Well, maybe it's space. Maybe it has to do with the screen flipping around. There could be a lot of issues as to why they ended up going with a mini. But on any type of production machine, we want to see a full HDMI out, not a mini. Also, one of the big things is that it does not provide you with C-Log 2. It only gives you C-Log 3. Now, is C-Log 3 enough for most productions? Yes, it is. But if you want to do color grading like a professional, you want to have that extra dynamic range of C-Log 2 in comparison to C-Log 3. So not providing that really cripples the camera, in my personal opinion, because you're losing out a lot of dynamic range that I would want. You have a big sensor that can capture a lot of dynamic range. Like the difference between this is like 45 megapixels, I think it is, on the Canon EOS R5C, whereas like with an FX3, I think it's around 12 megapixels. So you have a major difference, okay, between the two. But then all of a sudden where Canon just stumbles and smacks its head on the ground is with C-Log 3 in comparison to C-Log 2 to not take advantage of all of that extra information. Personally, I think that's a bad move because it makes it harder to mesh this camera up with more of the professional line, like a C70 or a C200, C300, 500, C700 that all do the C-Log 2. It will be very difficult to match up the footage because now you're going to color grade differently. You're not going to have as much information. So I think that is a issue, in my personal opinion. Now, once again, car tracking, any type of automobile tracking, motorcycle tracking, when it comes to eye tracking of animals, gophers, gerbils, and all this kind of stuff, that is not here. But of course, you do have your subject tracking, you have your eye tracking, face tracking, and all the rest of this stuff. So I think that's enough for the most part. I don't see where that will be something that I would say, oh, I'm not going to buy this camera because it doesn't do animal tracking for video. If I'm doing video productions, that's not going to be what I'm going to be doing anyways. For the most part, you're going to be pulling your own focus. All right. I don't even want to get into that. So moving into this whole menu system. Now, this was one of the things, like I said, was a big thing to me, is that whole idea of being a Frankenstein camera that has to reload the entire menu system between photo and video. I just think that that was stupid, number one. Number two, the menu system in the Canon EOS R5 is much better, cleaner, in my opinion, than the Canon EOS C70. Now, the power issue, this was a major thing that we were just talking about, whereas if you want to record 8K 60p, you need an external power source. You cannot use your battery. Dumb. All right, absolutely dumb. You can't power your lens and the camera at the same time if you're doing 8K 60p. Just put in another battery, like I said before. Just period. End of story. There's really nothing else that needs to be said. So like we were talking about before, it does not have XLR built into it. And some people said this is definitely, we don't want it because of that. So is it important? Now, for me as a DP, it's not important. Now, people are going to be like, well, what the hell are you talking? Why don't you want to have good audio going into the camera? Because we do not record audio into the camera that's going to be worth anything. The audio that goes into a camera is basically going to be scratch audio. And later on in post-production, we're going to sync high-end audio that is on the subject themselves, on the talent, either lapelled or boom mic, whatever it is, it's going to be over there somewhere and not here. So this is one of the reasons why I don't care about a louder fan on the actual camera itself. I don't really care about the audio going into it. Scratch audio is good enough. We're going to sync in post-production anyways, period. Either through time coding or we're going to slate it most of the time anyways, especially when I do episodic TV stuff. It's all slated anyway, so we know what the hell is on the roll. So for me, the audio coming into the camera is not that important. In my opinion, if you're using audio coming into a camera, you don't really know what you're doing anyways, so just stop complaining about something that you don't know about. That's my personal opinion. It's like shooting a flash, all right, on camera. If you're shooting a flash on the top of your camera, you're going to end up with crap photos, okay? And if you're doing that, you probably need to take a class and not worry about what is the best flash that you can use on top of that camera. This is all going to look like crap, okay? Anyways, don't want to get into a rant. As far as the EOS R5C and that TCI port, like I told you before, I don't think that we need it. I don't use TCI all the time. Every once in a while on certain sets that are going to be locked down in perpetuity, you can TCI them and basically match them all right, sync them all that are on set. Maybe you have 4 cameras, 5 cameras, just sync them all right there using a TCI cable, BNC cable. That's all great and all, but for the most part, whenever you're doing different type of locational shots and whatnot, you're going to clap it anyways. You're going to use a slate, and later on in post-production, that audio is going to be married to the scratch audio anyways. I am not a fan. I don't need this mini TCI port. For me, an SDI port would be glorious. So why is that the case? Well, let's say if I was shooting an interview with, I don't know, maybe the governor or something like that, and we were going to set this up in his office and then use another office down the hallway as a central control center, let's say, for the entire operation. Well, what you would do, not that I've done that, what you would do is you would run BNC cables from each camera through their SDI port all the way to a switcher in another room and be able to monitor what's going on, switch if you were doing live or whatnot. And you would get a high-end feed out. SDI is basically a standard delivery for digital video, and it usually sits around like 270 megabits, but it will go all the way up to like 3 gigabits. So you could put a lot of information down one of these BNC cables. So there is a lot of data that can be pushed through them. So for me, I just think that it'd be much more valuable to have an SDI port on the back in comparison to a TCI port for doing video production. That's my personal opinion. Now, some people have asked about, well, what do you think about a Sony FX3 in comparison to this, the Canon EOS R5C? Which way would you go between the two? Well, it's a really hard call. Yeah, you have no raw recording on the FX3, whereas here in the Canon EOS R5C, you do have raw. On the Sony, you don't have an EVF, which was stupid in my personal opinion. I would like to have seen an EVF on there. Of course, most of the time we're using monitors anyways, but still, just to have something on there just for a quick look just makes sense. It wouldn't cost that much. But anyways, with the EOS R5C, yes, you do have an amazing EVF actually on the back. Also, you're shooting 12 megapixels with the Sony in comparison to 45 megapixels with this. The Sony does have IBIS. Could be a major factor, depends on what you're running and gunning, or if you're doing something that's locked down on sticks, that really depends on what type of video production you're doing. Also, the rear panel is just really not that great on the Sony in comparison to the Canon EOS R5C, and I feel like the Sony FX3 is more like the Panasonic EVA 1. It is a purpose-built video camera. Whereas the Canon EOS R5C is more of that bridge camera, that Frankenstein. Basically, this camera that has that personality disorder that doesn't know what the hell does it want to be. Does it want to be photo? Does it want to be video? What the hell does it want to be? So I do believe, like I said, way before this even came out, this was going to be a bridge camera, and I stick by that. Now, when Canon was asked about IBIS and why was IBIS, or in-body image stabilization, removed, they came back with possible overheating issues, or maybe that filmmakers aren't going to use IBIS anyways, they're going to use a gimbal. I call bull. All right. I don't think that that's the case. I'm thinking that they want to dumb it down just a little bit so they don't step on their C series. Okay. Period. Canon is smart when it comes to this stuff. They slowly step you up without overstepping for the most part. For the most part. That's my personal opinion. I think that it just was nonsense. It was just a stupid statement, but this is what they do. But to their defense now, their in-body image stabilization does not exist, but their digital stab as well as IS combination, your in-lens stabilization plus your digital, the video that I've seen is pretty damn good. It's better than what I expected. Let's just say that. Now, is it professional quality? I would say no. Can you use it for B-roll? Yes. Would you use a gimbal? Yes, of course. If you're shooting professional work, you're going to be on a gimbal, period, end of story. You get some slight wobbling on the sides I don't care for, and sometimes you don't. It's like, I think it depends on what's going on in the scene. I don't know. Now, as far as 4K and 8K and 1080, it does have like a 3-stage mode, let's just call it. So you have your one mode, which is your full frame mode, where it captures the whole damn thing. You get 8K out of it. The whole sensor is captured. Then you have the crop mode, which is your Super 35, and you have a Super 16. The Super 35, you capture your 4K cropped, and your Super 16, you capture your 1080p cropped. So you have these multiple modes, let's say, which I think that is really important. I like that they did that. And I do like that they do have a full frame version of it, which is your 8K. The problem, of course, that I have is that, number one, yes, it doesn't overheat, but number two, which is stupid, you can't power the damn thing unless you use an external power source if you're going to capture the full gamut, let's say 8K 60p. I think that that's just stupid, in my personal opinion. Once again, for the third time, because it is stupid. Now, when I looked at video that went from 1080 out of that camera to 4K, it was a major difference. But when I looked at the 4K video to 8K, there was a difference, but it wasn't just wow difference. When you looked at 1080 to 4K, it was like, oh my God, all right, what am I doing? But 4K to 8K really wasn't that much of a difference in clarity, sharpness, but, and this is what's important, a lot of people have said this, they're like, oh, well, it's not that big of a deal. The big deal here is post-production. If you're capturing 8K and then going to then sample it to, let's say, 4K, you have a lot of real estate all the way around to be able to move things, move the camera, do like small camera moves, actually pretty large camera moves without any degradation to the pixels, because you're not having to blow any of them up because you're already capturing so much. So recording in 8K, whereas your deliverables are only 4K, is still smart. Same holds true with 1080. If you record in 4K and then later on deliver in 1080, having all of that extra real estate in post-production will make your editor extremely happy. So just do it, all right? If you can do it, do it. Now, the question here is, would I purchase this camera? And the answer to that is kind of yes and no. If I was in the Canon EOS R5 camp or R anything camp with a bunch of RF lenses already, moving into this as a small jump from the Canon EOS R5 to a cinema-esque camera probably would be a smart thing to do. Okay, and I might consider it. But the problem that I have here, there is too much lacking in this camera in comparison to a C-series camera that I can pick up for just $1,000 more, let's just say. For me, if I'm going to shoot video, I want video, a video camera. If I'm going to shoot photo, I want something more photocentric. So with this camera not having some of the niceties that I would want in a formal video camera is a problem. Now, does it have like all of like the cool stuff that we would normally see in a video camera, like false color or your waveforms or your vectorscope or LUTs and all the rest of that? Yeah, it has all of that stuff, but it doesn't have the niceties like an ND filter. There's no ND in there. And when you're shooting video, ND filters come in extremely useful, even when we're shooting on set. I just did a shoot, what was it, a couple of days ago. You guys know I did a little video in the car. Well, that shoot was done inside a building, but with huge glass windows. So being able to light the subject and then use an ND at the same time to be able to, let's say, balance the exterior light with the interior without having to cover everything would be a good option. Whereas if you don't have an ND filter built into the camera, like the Canon C series or the Sony FX line or even a Panasonic EVA 1 or something like that, if you don't have those built-in NDs, you need to now bring NDs. It's a pain in the ass. It just makes more sense with a video camera to have NDs built in. Also, having to buy a third-party external, XLR with a handle and all this kind of stuff, it's hokey. It's once again a Frankenstein build to put something together. In my personal opinion, doesn't make sense. Also, having a battery that is not going to last very long because it's specifically made for the photo camera or hybrid photo camera of the Canon EOS R5 in comparison to this new really heavy duty, let's call it, video production camera in the Canon EOS R5C. The thing has a fan in it now. All right. There is a lot of moving parts that are doing stuff. 8K, 60p, fan blowing. There's a ton of power that needs to be put into this unit. And to have a battery that can't support it is stupid. Now, for me, being a DP and doing a lot of episodic TV programming where the actual cameras are on location all the time, they're all plugged in anyways. But this is really important. Each camera does have a fully charged battery in it. Why is that? So if there was a power outage or some type of battery backup failed or whatever the case is, and now you have that glitch and now everything shuts off, that is a major problem. Having that battery in there that can support whatever you're recording is important. And not having that, I just think is half-assed, in my personal opinion. So kind of to round things up, I think that the implementation is a little bit lackluster. I do believe that it is that Frankenstein type of camera. I do think that Canon was trying to make a camera that is everything for everyone. And we know that it is absolutely impossible to be everything to everyone. And I think that's where they've kind of failed here. Is it a great camera? Yes. Would I personally buy it? No. Obviously, I told you why. So those are my thoughts. I want to hear your thoughts. They're definitely more important than mine. In the comment area below this video, put your thoughts. What do you think about it? Is this a camera that you're going to buy? If so, why? If not, why? To me, if you are a run and gun shooter, this is probably not your gig. I wouldn't go down this route. But if you're going to lock it down somewhere and you're going to have power to it and you're not going to have to worry about in-body image stabilization, I think the Canon EOS R5C might be for you. So once again, down below, give me your thoughts. If you enjoyed this video, even in the least, please throw it a thumbs up. That would be greatly appreciated. Not a little bit, greatly appreciated. Throw that thumbs up. Also, if you haven't subscribed to the channel as of yet, please do so. Also, click this little button over here so when I go live or when a new video comes out, you'll be notified of it immediately. Don't forget to pick up my ebook over at JCristina.com/books. Once again, JCristina.com/books. And finally, head over to my website, JCristina.com, where you can find all the photography tools that I've invented for you and me over the years. And hopefully there's something there that you might like. And if there is, please pick it up and support me and my family. That's it, guys. I'm out of here for yet another vlog. Many blessings to you and your family. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you in the next one.